Once again, welcome everyone to Mystical Monarchs, the Migration and Conservation of Monarch Butterflies from the Southern Maryland Audubon Society. And welcome to Mike Callahan, our guest speaker. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you for having me tonight.
Awesome.
Well, I have a number of things to share with you tonight, but I'll tell you a little story about how I got interested in monarchs. Just like raptors that are one of my favorite subjects, they happen to be an organism that can just pull people in. And I had started to be part of the Monarch Watch, which is a community science project with the University of Kansas. And you can tag monarchs when they're migrating to Mexico in the fall migration. So I started doing that and was riding around Cobb Island and noticed some butterflies in people's yards. So I talked to them about the project and they gave me permission to tag in their property. And then when I passed one yard, they saw me with the net and asked what was up. And I told them, and they said, oh, well, the monarchs land in our tree in the backyard at night at this time of year. And they took me around to their backyard and showed me. It was getting later in the day and you could see a lot of them hanging around. So I caught a couple from there and started to tag them, and then went to a coffee shop on Cobb Island and showed the owner, and she said, oh, let's do a tagging right here. So we tagged them right at the store, and the guests in the coffee shop got so excited about the monarchs. And I realized at that time how it just could pull everybody in. And that Linda Riggs, the owner of the coffee shop at the time, said, hey, this is so exciting. These people are just like kids and they're adults. They're just getting so excited about the butterflies. We need to do something to harness this excitement. So we started the Monarch Mania Butterfly Festival. It's been going on about 10 years, and there are only 2 years that it has been canceled due to circumstances. One was a hurricane, and the other was this year. So to make up for this year's festival being canceled, I decided to create a virtual festival. And later in the program, I'll make sure I share with you some information about that October 3rd virtual event. And you can hopefully join us on October 3rd for our virtual butterfly festival. But I'm going to go into screen share now. So give me just a moment to jump out of this and get into screen share. Also, as we go along, you're more than welcome to ask questions. If you could, when we're doing the asking of the questions, perhaps maybe use the raise your hand icon, and then that way we'll know who's asking a question, and then you can unmute yourself at that time, and that way we only have one person unmuted at the same time.
Mike, I'm not sure. I don't see a raise your hand on this particular session. We are doing a meeting and not a webinar. So what our participants can do is write in the chat box if they have questions. And also there'll be the opportunity for us to take the mics on at the end of your lecture, and they could ask them of you with their own voice, or if they prefer in the chat box. So that's great. Thanks for remembering, Mike.
So let's get started with the rest of the slides. All right, let's see if I can get this to forward. So what we'll talk about this evening are monarch life cycles, their habitat and survival, the various generations of monarchs, and how they migrate, and monarch tagging, which is community science, and a little bit about butterfly gardening as well. So let's talk about the life cycle first. You have an adult butterfly, the monarch. And for those of you who know how to tell a male from a female, I'm not going to tell you right now, but you may be laughing at this poster. This is a poster that apparently is sold in stores to be used in schools. So you may be laughing if you know about how to tell the gender of a monarch. But the first stage after the adult female lays her egg is the egg will hatch at about 2 days or so. And then out from the egg comes the larva, which is also known as a caterpillar. And it's real small. It's clear almost. And if you were to look at it under a leaf of milkweed, which we'll talk a little more about the milkweed in a few moments, but if you were to look under a milkweed leaf, you might notice there would be a hole where the young first instar caterpillar has started to chew on the milkweed. In fact, if you look on the leaf below, you might see some of the milky sap that is dripped out of the hole that the young caterpillar has just chewed. So that's one giveaway that you have monarchs. You can find the holes in the milkweed and the sap below on the leaf underneath the one that's being chewed on. So the caterpillar starts to grow, also called a larva, and it goes through another stage and sheds its skin. It's called second instar, and then a third instar. And as it grows, each one of the stages called instars is going to be a little bit bigger. And if you look at them, you can see they have these structures that resemble antennas on both ends, the front and the back end. Well, each time they shed their exoskeleton and are a new instar, the back structures that look like antennas are going to be the same size as the front ones were in the previous instar. And then the last instar as a caterpillar is the fifth one, and from there it turns into a chrysalis, which is the pupa, and that then becomes the adult. And it's a whole process known as metamorphosis. So here's what the egg looks like. This is the first stage. After the egg is laid, the female will lay her egg on milkweed plants, and there's a number of species of milkweed that she might choose from, but she lands on the plant, curls her abdomen up, and taps it underneath the leaf and deposits a little egg. And this is a magnified view of what that egg looks like. And it'll hatch in 2 to 4 days, depending on the temperatures. And milkweed is the host plant for the monarch caterpillar. So if you have no milkweed, you'll have no monarchs. Now you can have monarchs in your yard drinking nectar from other plants, but you won't have them as caterpillars unless you have milkweed, because that is the host plant for the female to lay her eggs on and the caterpillars to eat. And there are many different types of milkweed, and we'll talk about some of those in just a moment. So the second stage is the caterpillar or larva. And it's in there approximately 2 weeks is this stage. And we mentioned earlier, it'll molt 5 times, and each of those phases is called an instar. And they start out as that really small thing, and by the time they are ready to go into the chrysalis, they're about 2 inches in size, and they've basically been feasting nonstop, eating on that milkweed. And if any of you have children or are a big kid yourself, you may have read this book recently, but it's the Very Hungry Caterpillar story that's a favorite of children. Well, this is about a caterpillar that's a very hungry caterpillar, because it's got to eat all that milkweed in the 2-week period it has as a larva in order to become a butterfly. Then stage 3, the pupa or chrysalis, and that's after approximately 2 weeks. The caterpillar starts to spin a silk pad, and it's going to hang upside down on something, and it's going to form a J shape, just like the letter J. In fact, in this photo, you can see that photograph. picture shaped like a J. And with that little silk pad, it's attached, hanging upside down. It starts to squirm. And if you get the opportunity to watch this, it is really cool. The exoskeleton of the caterpillar starts to split at the head, and you start seeing a light yellowy green color appear. That is going to be the beginning of the formation of the chrysalis. And the back starts to split of the old skin, and as it does, each little step of the way, the chrysalis is a little more formed. And then finally, when it's completely formed, it's going to be the color of jade. And it actually looks like jade. And we'll show you that in just a moment. But it has black ring around the top and a ring of gold dots. And when you see this chrysalis in person, it's just hard to imagine that it's something from nature that's a living organism, because it looks like a jewel. It looks like an actual piece of jade with real gold beads around the top of it. And here it is as it's forming. Squirming, you can see the head split in the back after the J, and then it's getting a little more and more formed as the skin peels back. And the second to last one on the right, the skin is about to fall off, and there it has fallen off on the last one over to the right. It's got a little bit more to go before it's completely the chrysalis, and that's what it looks like at the end of that stage. Jade looking, the gold and black beads around the top. This picture does not do justification to what it looks like in person. And it's about 1 inch in length, and that ring around the top, well, since the monarch is a name in royalty, meaning the leader, this is called the crown of the monarch, that jeweled ring of black and gold around the top. And the butterfly is going to take about 10 to 12 days to develop inside. While it's developing, it's a really interesting situation taking place inside that chrysalis. It's sort of like, the best way to describe it is a butterfly or caterpillar milkshake in there, because all the genetic material is in there, and it's just like a soup. And then it starts to develop into the butterfly, and within about 10 to 12 days, the butterfly is completely developed inside that chrysalis. It will first start to turn black, and when it starts to turn black, it's just about complete. Shortly after turning black, the chrysalis turns clear, and you can see, as in this photo, the black and orange wings of an adult monarch ready to emerge. And so once it's come out, it's stage 4, it's the butterfly, and as a butterfly, it molts there for the last time. It's not going to change anymore. As it comes out, the chrysalis cracks, the monarch starts to climb out, pull its wings out, and climb up onto the chrysalis and grip a hold. And the wings start to unfold as blood is pumping through them and as gravity is starting to pull them. And eventually they're opened up all the way, just like the example on the far right. Now at this time, if the butterfly were to fall to the ground before it completely developed and opened up its wings, it may not be able to survive, because the wings have to have a complete flat area, and they have to be hanging upside down for that to happen. So if they're walking around on the ground, the wings aren't going to form properly, and you may find a butterfly that has deformed wings, which is never going to be able to fly. So here is how we tell a male from a female. Look at the top butterfly, and this monarch has thick veins on the lower wings. Look at the one to the bottom right, which is a male. He has thin veins on the lower wings, and notice the two black dots, one on each side of the wing. That black dot is called a pouch or a gland, and so this is how you can identify a male from a female. So the monarch generations, there are 4 in a year. And what we'll do now is try to help you understand how those generations work. So the first generation is in early spring. These monarchs have come out of hibernation in Mexico in the Sierra Madre Mountains, and there they're hanging in oyamel trees, which are an evergreen. And as soon as they wake up from that hibernation where it's cold or cool and dry, they immediately start to mate and feed. And after they've done that, they start to migrate north, and they make it into Texas and some of the lower states along the Gulf Coast. And when they make it to that spot, that's where the females lay their eggs on milkweed plant. And that generation 1, shortly after laying the eggs, will die off. But the eggs they just laid are going to hatch, and those will become the next generation of butterflies, which will be generation 2. So this is a map that shows a little bit about the migration in the spring as they come back up from the mountains of Mexico. They either come to the east part of the country, east of the Rockies, or they may go west of the Rockies. There are actually 2 populations of monarchs, maybe 3 in United States. There is the western population that overwinters in the coastal area of Southern California, and some of those may be migrating to Mexico. Then there is the east of the Rockies population, and those spread themselves out through the country and can make it all the way up into the beginning regions of Canada. There's also some monarchs in Florida, and there is an actual year-round population in Florida. So that generation 2 was hatched in the Texas and Gulf states area, and they are going to start the journey a little further north. So generation 2 is going to do the same thing that generation 1 did, go through that life cycle we talked about earlier, and they are going to hatch in about May to June, and they're only going to live about 2 to 6 weeks, but during that time they're going to fly north, and some may even make it all the way up into Canada, the southern parts of Canada. Monarchs can only go as far into Canada as milkweed grows because that's their host plant. So above a certain point, they are no longer found north of here in Canada. And again, that generation lives to be 2 to 6 weeks, and they give birth to generation 3, which is going to possibly move a little further north as well. And that generation 3 is the one that will give birth to generation 4. And generation 4 is the one that's going to migrate to Mexico. So what we're seeing right now is generation 4. And if they make it to the mountains of Mexico, it's going to look even crazier than this photo, which was taken at Point Lookout. This was getting later in the day, and many of the monarchs fly across the Potomac and the Bay, and they end up there at Point Lookout. And if it's getting late in the day, they may roost in the trees overnight. Well, in Mexico, when they land in the oyamel trees, there are millions of them. And there are so many that it's hard to imagine, but they're actually making the branches of the oyamel tree sag from the weight of the butterflies. So that generation 4, which is coming out in August through October, they're the ones heading down to Mexico, and they have that same exact life cycle as the generations 2 and 3 did. but instead of only living 2 weeks to about a month, they can live between 6 to 8 months. So it's a lot longer lifespan than generations 2 and 3. In our area here in Southern Maryland, it's usually between the middle of September, so approximately September 19th through October 1st, that is the peak of the migration. But that also depends on weather conditions throughout the season. So that generation 4, I'm going to back it up for a moment. Generation 4, if they make it to Mexico and overwinter, and they may start coming back in about February or so, January 1st comes, they're still in Mexico. Generation 1 gets a brand new name on January 1st. Because it's a brand new calendar year, as humans, we give them the new name Generation 1, or basically Generation 1 of the new year, or the first generation of the new year. So Generation 4, same exact organism, but on January 1st gets a name change to Generation 1. And that Generation 1, who used to be called Generation 4 before January 1st, is the one that heads back up north and lays its eggs on milkweed somewhere in the southern states along the Gulf Coast. So monarchs can migrate up to 2,500 miles. And just like birds, they'll use the drafts of warm air to help them glide. And it's just like the birds that process allows them to conserve energy for that really long flight. Migrating to Mexico, they've been tracked to fly 11 miles per hour, and they can also fly up to 80 to 100 miles per day, all depending on the weather and the speed and direction of the wind. So here's their southern route, heading from the southern parts of Canada all the way down to Mexico, and some of them go into Florida. They may even cross the Gulf Coast there across the water. So as they're spending their winter in those forests in Mexico and Southern California, the ones in California, they're actually staying in the, what are the trees? Eucalyptus trees on the southern coast of California. They're spending that winter there, and over 3 million or more butterflies are in the forests of Mexico. Now, at one time, there used to be approximately 8 sanctuaries where the monarchs would go over winter in the mountains of Mexico in Sierra Madre. But due to loss of habitat and changes in habitat, they have now gotten down to about 4 places that they go to in the winter. And here's an example of how 10,000 butterflies in a tree, imagine that, how much weight 10,000 butterflies might be, and how they make the branches of the trees droop. Here's a sign at one of those sanctuaries in Mexico. So as they're migrating, something takes place in their body and they go into a state called diapouse, which means they have already developed sexually, but they are unable to mate and lay eggs during that time period. So that state called diapouse prevents them from wasting energy that they may need to make it through that cool season in Mexico. And again, that generation 4 is the one that is heading down to Mexico right now, and they will be the ones on January 1st to get a name makeover and become generation 1 of the brand new year. And just like some species of birds who instinct tells them to head south, the same thing happens with the monarchs. Now, there are some birds who actually have to have a parent teach them, like cranes and swans and geese. But many of the other birds, it's instinctive that they migrate south when the seasonal changes happen. And it has to do with the temperatures and the times of day, the day length, daylight length. So that's what determines the bird's migration time, and it also determines the monarch's migration time. So the mystery of the monarchs. It's a mystery how monarchs know where to travel every year. It's just instinct. They do have a magnetic thing inside of them that allows them to determine where the Earth's magnetic field is, but it's still a bit of a mystery as to how they migrate. And they're able to adjust their internal compass wherever they fly and make sure they're flying in the right direction, heading south. If you were to take a monarch from Maryland and take it back up to, say, New York and let it go, yeah, not the best thing to do, but the monarch would still know when it got back to New York, it had to head south again to make its journey to Mexico. So what are some things that you can do to be involved with monarchs and their conservation? Well, one thing is become a community scientist. Community science is formally known as citizen science, and it's a way that everyday people like you and I can be part of a science project. You don't have to have a degree in science to be a scientist. So one thing you could do is make your yard a Monarch Waystation. And in order to do that, you would contact Monarch Watch, which is at monarchwatch.com. They are that community science project out of the University of Kansas, and they will certify your yard if you can provide them with information about the following things. And one of the things you need to have in your yard to become a Monarch Waystation is a source of nectar for the butterflies. And you've got to have a source of host plants, which for the monarchs is milkweed. And then there's some other community science projects you can be part of. Things like monarch tagging, or monarch size and mass studies, or larval monitoring. And again, you don't have to have a degree to do this. You just have to be a member of the community. Here's what the Monarch Waystation sign looks like. If you apply to become a Monarch Waystation, you pay the application fee, and you provide Monarch Watch with the list of host plants you have in your yard, the nectar sources, which are annuals and perennials, and then you have to have a sustainable management plan. You can't just get certified by telling them you've got milkweed and nectar plants in the yard. You have to have a plan that says you're going to maintain that yard sustainably for the management of monarchs. And if all three of those things are done, you will be accepted, and you'll get a sign that looks like this that says you are a Monarch Waystation. Now there's a number of milkweeds in Maryland, but here are just some of them. I'm only going to mention 4 here, but there are a number of species more than this, but these are some of the more commonly seen ones. We have common milkweed, swamp milkweed, butterfly weed, which you'll see here is the orange one. The swamp milkweed is the upper right picture with the light pink to dark pink blossoms. And there's a milkweed vine called honeyvine milkweed. Some people like to plant the tropical milkweed just because it's pretty, but it is not native to Maryland. It does not make it through the winter. And so some people plant it, but it is an annual rather than a perennial here in Maryland. And it's probably even best just to not plant it at all and stay with the native species that the monarchs have been finding here for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. So the first one that you see most of is common. In fact, it gets the name common milkweed because of that. It is the most likely to be seen. It's very easy to grow in your yard. And when it's blooming, it has a very sweet smell. That scent is very attractive to not only monarchs for nectaring, but all sorts of native pollinators. So if you're planting for monarchs, you're not just helping them out, you're also helping out a number of native pollinators, which are often in trouble due to habitat changes, pesticide use, and GMO plants. All kinds of stuff can create issues for monarchs and other pollinator species. There's the swamp milkweed, which, unlike the common milkweed, can grow with its feet in wet areas, wet soils, swampy, marshy areas. It'll grow in dry areas as well, but you do need to water it a little more regularly, whereas the common milkweed is used to growing out in meadows and fairly dry places for that matter. Swamp milkweed has a really big leaf, whereas common milkweed has a very big leaf, oval round leaf, whereas swamp milkweed has a narrower oval shaped leaf, not very big leaf at all compared to the common milkweed, which we'll back up and show you again. Swamp milkweed seems to be one of the favorites of the monarchs. When I have both of them planted together, it seems like the butterflies choose the swamp milkweed first. Now, that's not a scientific study. That's just my observation in my own neighborhood. But the common milkweed leaves can get so big. I've found some leaves about the size of a man's size 12 shoe. Then the butterfly weed, much smaller, grows out in meadows, and it has a narrow leaf as well, and this beautiful orange flower, which in your garden, if you like to landscape with native plants like I do, this butterfly weed, sometimes called butterfly milkweed, is bright orange and looks really nice when you plant it with, say, a nectaring plant that might be purple, that blooms at the same time. Liatris, also known as gay feather, is a great one to plant near this. The two of those, dark purple and this orange together, really pop if you plant them side by side. And then the honeyvine milkweed, which is got a heart-shaped leaf, which sort of resembles a morning glory. In fact, I know somebody who mentioned recently they had these morning glories all over their fence and they kept ripping them off because they didn't want to choke out the plants. And then this year they didn't get to do that and realized there were monarch caterpillars on it and wondered what were they doing on the morning glories, and then discovered with some research that they weren't morning glories, they were actually milkweed. And if you break the stem of this milkweed vine, the honey vine, it's going to bleed the sap just like the other milkweeds will. So you can confirm it's milkweed if you're not already sure it is. Now, there are a number of plants you can plant for nectar sources. Some people like to plant ornamental plants, and I do a little bit of that as well. But there are lots of native plants that you can plant. And if you're one of those people who has to have a very cultivated and neat looking yard, and there's nothing wrong with that, you can do the exact same thing with native plants as you can with cultivated plants. You just have to prune and trim and grow in clumps and mulch, but you don't have to have a yard that looks like a wild meadow like mine. You can make it look just like a nicely cultivated yard. But some annuals they really do seem to like are thistles and vervain and zinnia and the Mexican sunflower, which the Mexican sunflower has to be blooming right now, and they really seem to come into that. Then some perennials you can plant for them: bee balm, black-eyed Susan. That blazing star is another name for the gay feather or the liatris. High tide bush, which is Baccharis hemifolia, I believe. Coreopsis, goldenrods. The monarchs really love the goldenrods, which happen to be blooming right now as they're migrating south. So if you have those in your yard, there's a very good chance you're going to see nectaring monarchs on your property. New York ironweed is a purple plant. They seem to really like that one as well. They also seem to like the New England aster. Of course, they love the milkweeds, but they're not going to get those during their migration season because they've passed blooming by now. But purple coneflowers are another one they might get nectaring on at this time of year because some of them are still blooming. This list is just a small list of things you can plant for them, but there are so many more. And then as a community scientist, you can be part of Monarch Watch's tagging. And this is the thing that really gets people excited about monarchs. I mentioned the site earlier, but here it is. If you'd like to write it down, it's monarchwatch.org. They have a really great store. It's the University of Kansas, and they sell more than just the monarch tags and those signs you can put in your backyard saying you're a Monarch Waystation. They have t-shirts and books and carriers and insect nets and all kinds of monarch related things, including some art. And if you purchase the tags, it's a really fun family activity to be part of, and you're contributing to science, community science. It's a little teeny sticker that you can see is on the lower wing of this monarch, and we're going to share with you that in just a moment. It's not a tracking system that has anything to do with GPS or satellites or anything. It's just a paper sticker with an individual number on it, and if somebody finds it, that's what happens. They know information about the monarch. So this community science, formerly known as citizen science, is great for kids of all ages. So how do you catch and tag a monarch? Well, mid-September, the asters and the goldenrods start blooming, and that's a perfect place and time to tag the monarchs. Because if they're landing on the nectaring plants, they're a lot easier to catch than they are when they're flying through the air. I do catch them on occasion in the air, but it's a whole lot easier to catch them when they've landed on something. And basically, you're swooping your insect net near the plant, and you scoop them up. You do a little wrist flip, and you flip your net to trap them inside. And then once you've done that, you're able to reach inside and gently get them out and put the tag on them. Now, it was at the University of Kansas that the research was done in the laboratories that they determined the size and location for a tag. So flight of the monarch and its migration or its normal everyday movements. And you record the location as part of your data, the tag number, and also you're going to have to record the gender and the date, and you send that into Monarch Watch by December 1st. So this year and last year, the tags were a little new. They have less information on them, but they're still really small. If you have a hand lens, it comes in very handy, and if you wear glasses, you're going to have to use them probably to read the number because it's a very small tag with a very small writing on it. It says mwtag.org. It mentions the project's name, Monarch Watch, and then it has the individual ID tag number, and this one's ACC 487. This happens to be one out of my batch of stickers, but it depends on where you are and what time in the season you ordered your tags as to what series of numbers you might get. So you're putting the tag on the lower right wing. And as a scientist, you should always be accurate with your data collection. And you should always repeat the same procedures over and over again. And in this case, you should always put the sticker on the lower right wing, because that's where the research has been done to determine that's the right spot. And it also makes it easier for people to observe and read the tag when the wings are closed as a butterfly is nectaring on a flower, or perhaps in the mountains of Mexico. Now, I use a toothpick, but some friends of mine use fingernails. I don't have fingernails long enough to do that, and I'm totally freaked out about getting the tag stuck to my fingernail and then not being able to use it on the butterfly, because it's a very strong sticky substance that the sticker stays completely on the wing from here to Mexico and then back to the southern states. It will not fall off, but if it sticks to your finger, it's not likely to stick well to the butterfly because some of the sticky stuff has come off on your skin. So I always use a toothpick and I stick it into the corner of the sticker. And then once I trap the sticker between my fingers and the butterfly's wing, I gently roll the toothpick out, and it minimizes removal of the sticky substance that holds the sticker in place. So ready, set, and migrate. That monarch is ready to go. Once you've got the sticker on, it's going to continue its journey. And one of the best places to release a monarch, if you've never been with me before when I've done tagging, is from your nose. And every single one of these kids had a ball letting it go from their nose. I mean, look at the smiles and the laughter. Even though my friend on the right has it on her hand, she had actually released one before that from her nose. And no matter what sort of kid you are, whether you're a big kid or a little kid, look at how much fun these big kids are having releasing monarchs. So now that you know a little bit about monarchs, what are you going to do for them? Be part of that Monarch Mania and do something small. You don't have to start really big. Planting plants in your yard that have nectaring plants and milkweed is a great small step to make. And that is the end of our slide presentation. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and then I think we'll see what we can do about taking questions. And I also have some other things I want to share with you in between our question and answer session. Tiffany, are you there?
Yep, I'm here. I am indeed. I'm just giving some direction. Looks like we do have one question. Do monarchs have predators?
Do monarchs have predators? They sure do. And that opens up a perfect question for answering another question. Monarchs do have predators. They could be spiders. They could be praying mantises. They might be certain birds. They might be mice. Depending on how the organism has evolved will determine whether or not they can eat a monarch or not. Because monarchs, as a caterpillar, are eating milkweed. And milkweed has that latex substance. It's like a corticosteroid. It tastes really bad, and it also makes the organism's heart act up and beat really fast, and it may cause them to die. So with that happening, if you got that terrible taste and your heart's beating really fast and you don't die, you're probably never going to taste a monarch again after that. And the reason you will recognize it is because in nature, organisms with orange and black and red and black are showing you the warning colors that something's not good about them. They may be venomous. They may have toxins in them that are bad for you. For example, the Gila monster and the coral snake and the black widow spider, they all have those black and orange, black and red coloring. Every single one of those can put a hurting on whatever organism it is they come in touch with, if they get bit, stung, or whatever it might be. Excuse me. And there are some really cool videos out there. If you do a search on the internet and look for blue jay eating monarchs, you'll come across some footage, and it shows a blue jay biting a monarch and then spitting it out of its mouth and basically vomiting at the same time. And that monarch probably escaped, and that blue jay will never do that again.
We have quite a few other questions piling up now, Mike. Do you have any idea how many tags are reported as found?
That's a very good question, and I do not know the answer to that. I've only had a couple myself, but since that question is typed into our meeting, I can go back and look at that and find the answer for you and get back to you later. Unless there happens to be somebody online with us right now that happens to know the answer to that, and you're more than welcome to share that answer with us as well.
Well, we can see. I don't see any answers to that, at least in the group chat, but there's a follow-on question from Liz. She asks, are monarchs the only butterflies that make that long migration?
Monarchs are not the only migratory butterfly species. Here in North America, in the US, the painted ladies are also migratory, and there may be a couple other butterflies, but they don't fly quite as far as the monarchs do to Mexico.
Do they, the painted ladies, do they have the same number of generations as monarchs?
I am not familiar with the painted lady, so I'm not sure how many generations there are.
Yeah. And there's another follow-on question from Cindy after that question. She asks, do any other butterflies overwinter in the United States?
Some butterflies do overwinter. They may overwinter in leaf litter or in the bark of a tree or a cavity of a tree. And some of them also overwinter as pupa or maybe even caterpillars. And then in the spring come out from the chrysalis or come out as the caterpillar and start to develop.
Wow, that's very cool. I never think about that.
One of the butterflies that's really nice to see in this area is the zebra swallowtail. And just like the monarch, the zebra swallowtail has a very specific host plant, and its host plant happens to be in fruit right now. It doesn't eat that, but it eats the leaves from it. But the pawpaw is the host for the zebra swallowtail, and pawpaws are ripe right now. And if you've never had one, they're a very sweet and delicious fruit, native to our eastern U.S. forests.
That's neat. I didn't know that either. I think I have some in my forest, and I have seen those zebra swallowtails in my yard. So that's kind of cool to know.
So if you've got zebras, you got pawpaw.
That's neat. We have another question from Marky Boy. How many eggs does the female lay? And I think that is probably talking about the monarch female.
Yes. I cannot remember the answer to that, but I think she can lay up to about 1,000 in a season, but I'm going to also have to look up that answer for Marky Boy.
Wow. Okay. Melissa actually had a suggested answer for the number of tagged monarchs that are recovered. She says
Oh,
she thinks
good.
the recovery rate is only about 1%.
Okay. Thank you, Melissa.
Okay. BC asks or says, unknowing about the nectar for monarchs, he has about 1,500 square feet of goldenrod growing on his property right now. Does it make sense to plant a variety of nectar milkweed species, or is a monoculture okay?
Well, if it planted itself, then it's probably okay. They don't mind it. But if you want to put some more plants on your property to attract them, different sources of nectar, that would be great. And of course, if you have the ability to put host plants in the milkweed species, that's a great opportunity to see the monarchs as well.
Cool.
Yeah, the fields are all yellow right now with the monarchs drinking the nectar from the goldenrods and tickseed sunflowers and some of the other yellow plants that happen to be blooming right now at this time of the fall.
This is wonderful. Thank you, folks, for sending in so many questions. This is great. I'm learning so much from this. Judy says, we have several caterpillars in chrysalis now. When should we start to worry that they won't make it?
Well, it takes about 2 weeks. So if they're in there longer than 2 weeks, you might have to worry. Also, if the caterpillar was parasitized by a fly that lays its egg on the caterpillar and then hatches inside, sometimes the caterpillar dies, wilts and dies before it becomes a chrysalis. Other times it dies in the chrysalis because this larva of the fly eats the inside of the caterpillar or the pupa in the chrysalis alive. So it's not going to come out if that happened.
Right.
But it does turn black like the chrysalis does when it's ready to come out as a butterfly, but then it doesn't turn clear.
Interesting. Cindy also asks, are they tagging any other kinds of butterflies in the US?
Not that I know of, but there may be some research at universities with graduate students or something, but I don't know of any programs that are tagging any other butterfly species at this time.
Cindy says pawpaws grow in Flag Ponds Park in Calvert County near the boardwalk in the wooded trail. That's great.
And pawpaw happened to be George Washington's favorite fruit.
Really?
Yes, and Mr. Jefferson enjoyed it so much and thought how exotic it was that he had to send seeds to his friends in France to prove to them that America had exotic things as well. Had to get my history in there somewhere.
You know, I would like to just mention, I had included in the invitation the little factoid that over the last 20 years, the eastern population of monarchs has suffered an 80% decline or thereabouts. And that's why there's all this studying being done and the tagging and the broad community efforts to plant the host plants and the nectaring plants. And do you have anything more to add to that, Mike, about why they've suffered such a big decline?
And another piece of information, the California population is at a critical stage right now. For the last few years, their numbers have been really low. And so they're keeping an eye on them for fear of them becoming extirpated, which means extinct in their former range. Some of the things that are creating problems for monarchs are if there's not enough milkweed, monoculture of our agricultural crops. So a field of corn or soybeans, row after row after row, and no edge of the field with plants that aren't part of that crop are left anymore. So there's a lot of loss of habitat. Also, the pesticides we use are very harmful to the monarchs, and so are the genetically modified plants we plant. There are examples of genetically modified plants with pesticides in their genetic makeup, which means they keep insects off of them. And that also means that when they produce pollen, it often or nectar, it often has those pesticides now in the genetic makeup of the pollen. So there have been records of monarchs dying because of that in the past.
So
And
do you have advice for us as homeowners or gardeners, or folks taking care of our own property? Like, we should avoid pesticides in our home use and other things like that, aside from planting, the beneficial plants.
I would say if you can go as organic as possible, that's going to be best for the birds and the insects all around. And if you have lots of different plants, you're going to have lots of different organisms, insects for birds to eat. And oh, I just got pooped on by a caterpillar.
Oh, what happened?
I'm holding a monarch caterpillar that I'm going to show you in just a moment. I took it off the milkweed in my yard earlier, and so I'm going to show it to you in a moment. But I'm not even sure where the caterpillar frass went. I felt it hit my hand and it rolled somewhere.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to clean up afterwards. Caterpillar scat is called frass, F-R-A-S, and so I'll show you the caterpillar in just a moment. But yeah, using as much organic stuff as possible and planting native species, getting rid of, and some people are going to hate me for saying this, but getting rid of butterfly bush in your yard. Butterfly bush is a Mediterranean species. In Maryland, it's listed as an invasive species. It will grow in places it's not supposed to. And people have told me before, well, the butterflies really like it. And I don't see any of them growing anywhere around in my neighborhood. They're just in my garden. Well, I have proof that they do grow in places that they haven't been planted. We used to have several butterfly bushes in a garden at Nanjemoy Creek Environmental Education Center where I work. And 3 years ago, I pulled out all of the butterfly bush and replaced them with all native plants that bloom throughout the year, shrubs and different perennials and annuals that bloom throughout the season and provide nectar for the monarchs and other pollinators. Well, this summer, which is 3 years after those butterfly bushes removed from that garden, seeds that were still there germinated this spring and grew all summer long. So they really are invasive and will grow in places they're not. But there is a native for every cultivated plant there is. So if you are interested in getting rid of them, which I hope you will, pull them out and do a little research and find things that bloom throughout the year that will replace them and be just as nice when it comes to their blooms and be so much better than the analogy of the butterfly bush being like crack cocaine to a monarch, because it's very low in nutrition, the nectar that comes from them, compared to the plants that they would use that are native.
One way you guys can find out about native plants that we can grow here is to check out National Audubon Society Native Plant Database. And I don't have the URL at hand, but if you just search on that term, Native Plant Database, Audubon Society, it will bring it up definitely. And all you have to do is enter in your zip code and tell them what kinds of plants you want, if you want trees or if you want shrubs or vines. And you can also put other criteria in and say you want to plant, you want foliage and plants for butterflies in particular. Even you can search that way and it will return plants that are good for this area that you can actually go out and buy or grow from seed to help our native butterflies. I see one other question, Mike.
Good. And we'll
Do you
take
want
that, and then I've got the caterpillar, and we're also going to tag a butterfly tonight as well.
Oh, great. I hope folks will be able to stay. I only see this one last question, and it's from Liz again. She says, seems like a lot of host plants grow along the roads. Which state highway likes to mow right about now? Is there any way to convince them to stop doing that?
There probably is, and I know in some states they do have their state highway administrations actually plant the median strips with pollinator plants. So probably writing to your legislatures and asking them to encourage the state highway administrations in your various states. Maryland used to do that. I don't know if the state highway still does that. When I worked for them many years ago, they did have a program for planting the median strips, and they, for the most part, used native plants. But yeah, it's this time of year I see the milkweed along the side of the road or in fields, and then next thing you know, they've been cut down. It's like, oh, right in the middle of the time where the monarchs could have used that to lay their eggs of for generation 4. Well, I've got a caterpillar here. So this one's got a day or two more before it becomes a pupa. I'm going to hold it up. I don't know if you can see it here. I'm going to have to get as close to the camera as possible. And, oh, I can't see my hand. All right, there we go.
That's awesome, Mike. I love it.
And we're going to tag a butterfly too. So give me just a moment to put the caterpillar back. Caterpillars are going to get to spend the night in the house tonight. And so are the butterflies, because I'm not going to take them out to let them go. I caught the butterflies today. And so we're going to get one out. But first, I'm going to show you what the tag looks like close up. Oh, before I forget, I want to make the announcement about Mystical Monarchs, the virtual butterfly festival. It is going to be Saturday, Saturday, October 3rd from 10 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. We have a number of guest speakers attending, and we will have Carrie Wickstead from the Maryland Department of Natural Resources, Melissa Boyle from the Maryland Department of Natural Resources. We have Minister Marta Pena Jaramillo from the Mexican Embassy in Washington going to attend and represent Mexico. And we'll also do some tagging during the session as well. So if you're interested in that, there is a link available, and I don't have the link on my screen. I should have done that and put it at the end of my program. But if you're interested in that, I'm going to give you my email address, and you can send me an email, and I'll send you the link to register for Mystical Monarchs on October 3rd. My email address is raptorsrulemc@gmail.com, which is spelled like this: RAPTORSRULEMC@gmail.com. Send me an email, or if you're on Facebook friends with me, an instant message is fine too, and I will send you the link for that meeting. That event is what came out of Monarch Mania not being able to happen this year. The Citizens Association couldn't do events and had shut down for business. And I said, we can't let that happen. We can't miss out on a Monarch Festival. So along with the help of JES Avanti Foundation Incorporated and the College of Southern Maryland, we are having this virtual event. The college is actually allowing us to use their business Zoom account so that we can host more than just 100 people like the regular Zoom accounts. So thank you, College of Southern Maryland, and also JES Avanti for helping provide funds so that we could make this event happen. Thank you, Liz. I know you're out there tonight. So we got a monarch to tag. And this is how small the stickers are. Oh, I don't know if you can see that. And I'll put the pencil next to it so you can see it really is the size of the tip of a pencil eraser. All right, so I got to get the toothpick. I'm not sure how this is going to translate on the computer, so we're playing with this right now, so bear with me. I don't know if you're going to be able to see this happen or not, but we'll do our best. All right, so I got the sticker, and I'm going to take the toothpick and stick it underneath the sticker without touching my finger on it so I don't ruin the sticker. Yeah, this may not translate very well on the screen. All right, so we got the sticker, and now we're going to get the butterfly. All right, so I positioned it so that it's going to go on the lower right wing, which is this area right here. If you look at the veins, it may resemble the palm of a hand with the fingers coming off of the palm. And so you can see the hand right there and all these veins be the finger. So I'm going to put it in the middle of that palm. So let's see if this is going to work on the screen. And I'm doing this backwards to show you. It's going on the right side of the insect. I just have to do it not facing me for you to be able to see it. Right there. And then I'm going to roll the toothpick out from under and then do a gentle squeeze both sides of the wing, not to hurt it, and making sure that the abdomen is not in between the wings where I'm squeezing. And because monarchs have color, those color of their wings are their scales. They're one of the butterflies that scales don't rub off very easily, but their scales basically give them color. And so if you wipe all the scales off, they can still fly. They just don't look very sexy to their mate. And I've got to open it up now and see what the see what the gender of this butterfly is. Does everybody remember how to tell if it's a male or female? When I open this one's wings up for you to get a peek, see if you can tell whether it's male or female. I'm not going to tell you until everybody's got a moment. And if you want to, you can type in your answer, male or female. I see one answer's popped in. All right, BC got his answer in. So, anybody else taking a guess? All right, if you said female, that is correct because she did not have the dark spots on her lower wing veins, and she had thicker veins. So now that she's been tagged, she's going to go back into her carrier. I can't let her go in the house tonight like I would normally like to do outside, but here's what I would have done if I'd have taken her outside. Stick her on the tip of my nose. Oh, it tickles like little Velcro tickles. And then she would, oh yeah, she'd climb up your face and fly off. She might decide to fly off right away. It's up to her what she does. But if she does climb up your face, it's an awesome photo opportunity to have a monarch mask on your face. So that's how you tag a monarch, and it's so easy to do. Anybody can do it. Even kids can do it. Just showing you how to do it once, and you're able to do it as many times throughout the season as you can catch monarchs and tag. I see somebody put a note up about the email address. Tiffany, can you type in my email address in the chat for everyone to see?
I'm doing that right now.
Great. Thank you so much.
raptorsrulемc@gmail.
Exactly. Are there any other questions, or does anybody have anything they'd like to share about monarchs in their yard?
I'd like to just speak up for the group and say that I did insert the URL to Audubon's native plant database into our group chat. It's www.audubon.org/native-plants. And that's the database that you can go to and type in your zip code and get results for plants that butterflies like. I grew some milkweed, Mike, actually, but other insects love milkweed as well. And
oh, yes.
and I found they've just decimated it.
There are so many things that love the milkweed. And did you notice, Tiffany, did you see, you got to see some of the insects on your milkweed that were eating it?
I did.
Did you notice that most of them were red and black?
I did. There was something called a milkweed bug or something like that.
Milkweed bugs and milkweed beetles, both are black and orange or black and red. Again, those warning colors in nature.
Yep.
And there's another relative of the butterflies, another Lepidoptera. It's the milkweed tussock moth, which is a black and brown fuzzy caterpillar, and that turns into a rather plain looking moth, but it's milkweed tussock moth.
They ate my milkweed last year, like completely, like to the ground completely. But you know, it's why we grow native plants.
Exactly, exactly. And just plant more.
Yes, and they've spread too since I planted them.
And you get seeds every year, so you can share your seeds with your friends. They send out roots and they grow by roots. And you can sometimes dig them up at this time of year or early in the spring and transplant them and get them to survive. So share your seeds and share your the roots at spring or fall with friends, and they'll get milkweed started as well. A whole little ecosystem based on the milkweed. It's so much fun to watch it all season long, from when they're blooming and dozens of pollinators are on them, to seeing, like Tiffany said, the milkweed bugs and the milkweed beetles coming in. And it's so much fun and joy just to watch the seasons change with your milkweed.
You know, just for folks who might be in the area, I have noticed that at Oak Ridge Park in Charles County, not where all the baseball fields are, but around where there are hiking trails, there are fields where there have a heck of a lot of milkweed planted. And it's a great place to go birding, but it's also great for watching butterflies. I saw them there this summer when I was doing the breeding bird atlas research.
If you're looking for a local place to find native plants, there's a really good one. I mean, there's a lot of nurseries that sell them as well, but there's a really good place in Rosaryville State Park called Chesapeake Natives Nursery, and they sell native plants, shrubs, trees, all kinds of different natives, and they only sell plants that they got the seeds from the local watershed. So they're going to only have plants that were from specimens in the Chesapeake Bay watershed that they are part of. And they're online too. You can look them up as well. It's a local place. It's a nonprofit organization that's based out of Rosaryville State Park in Upper Marlboro area.
Right. I just put the name in the chat in case folks missed it. It's Chesapeake Natives.
Oh, and Melissa reminded us you can't just go visit the nursery right now. You have to place an order online and then you go pick it up ready to go. So you can't right now wander the nursery and pick and choose things. You have to place your order online, and then they have your order packed and ready as you come in to pick it up.
Is it true, Mike, that they were, even before COVID, I think they were only open like one weekend a month or something?
I think so. They're very limited. It's all volunteers that are there. And so they're limited to the amount of time, I guess, based on their volunteers.
But definitely worth checking out. We had an event there, and it was really great to explore all of their little rooms and their growing habitats. It was awesome. Really neat place. So I don't see any other questions in the chat. I think, Melissa shared a story. She said she planted swamp milkweed around her mailbox, and the neighbors took notice of all the life on it. So you don't have to hide it. So yeah, you can do that and let all your neighbors in on all the fun. It is great. I have mine in my backyard, but actually it would grow better up on my mailbox. There's more sun. So if there are any more questions, I guess if no one types anything else in the box, then Mike, we can probably wrap up.
Okay. Just want to say hi to Karen Ferguson out there. Good to see you.
All right. Thank you, Carolyn. Thank you for coming. Folks are starting to sign off. So yeah, I think that wraps it up for me, at least.
Well, thanks everyone for being here tonight, and maybe I'll see you at the Mystical Monarchs Butterfly Festival too.
October 3rd, don't forget.
See you around. Yeah,
we have another meeting in early October. Check it out on our events calendar on our website, somdaudubon.org. See you guys soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.